Welcome to this Winhance Devlog video. Now in this video we're going to be having a look at some of the issues that are open on GitHub for the Winhance project. And most importantly in this video there are a few bugs that needs fixing. But whatever I'm working on in this video, I'll put it on the screen up here somewhere so that you can see exactly what issues I'm working on at what point in the video. So let's get started. So the first thing that we need to have a look at is this Winhance bug where it's not installing third-party applications. Now, a lot of users already stated that they tried some different things, and it seems to be related to when they install Windows with a XML file that's created via Winhance. So the first thing I did when testing this was I fired up Winhance in a virtual machine, and then I tried to install Firefox. Now, this was in a normal clean install of Windows 11, not with a Winhance XML file. And Firefox did install correctly. As you can see, it's installing Firefox. The icon just appeared on the desktop, and it did indeed install Firefox successfully. So then after that, I went and created a new ISO file with Winhance and Wimutil with an XML file that was generated by Winhance. And so I did a clean install of Windows inside of this virtual machine here. And then I downloaded Winhance and installed it so that I can then test if software installs or not. I'm trying to recreate this problem. So I'm selecting Firefox to install it. And then you can see it immediately shows that it's completed, but the installation failed. So at least I was able to recreate the problem up until this point. So after this, I went and set all of the services to automatic. And I also changed the scheduled tasks, everything, all of these services and scheduled tasks that you're able to disable in Winhance. I enabled all of that again so that I can see if it isn't maybe one of the services or a scheduled task that's not starting up that's causing these installations to fail. So even after doing that and then restarting the computer, trying to install again, you can see I'm trying to go through the installation again, but immediately it just shows that it's completed and the installation failed. So at this point, I went back to the logs, opened the log file and copied the logs. And you can see the specific error there says that the server certificate didn't match any of the expected values. So I copied all of this. Then I gave those logs and a description of this issue to Claude, and basically also told it that on a clean install of Windows, these installations work on Winhance. But as soon as I use a auto unattend XML file that's generated by Winhance, then it doesn't work. Now, I also told it that I tried testing if it's related to one of the services or scheduled tasks, and that it still doesn't work. I also told it that I thought WinGet might not be initialized, but it is initialized. And I can see in the logs that it is using WinGet to try and install these applications. So Claude basically came back with a few problems and basically said stuff like, because the network adapters are disabled, WinGet doesn't have a chance to be updated via Windows Update, and the clock isn't synchronized and all of that. So I went through all of the stuff that Claude gave here. I enabled the Windows updates so that the normal security updates are downloaded. I then ran a check for updates so that it can install all of the latest updates. I made sure that the clock is in sync and that none of those settings are wrong. But even after doing all of that and then trying to install an application, it still didn't work. As you can see, Firefox is still not able to be installed, and this goes for any of the external apps. So at this point in time, I opened the terminal myself and ran a WinGet search for Firefox so that I can see, is this actually related to Winhance itself or is it related to WinGet? So while I was doing this search and I was looking for the package, I got this interesting message here that says it failed when searching the source. The results will not be included from the MS store. So at this point, I knew it had to have something to do with WinGet, and maybe it's not a Winhance issue. So then I tried to install Firefox with WinGet, and as you can see, it didn't work, and it gave me the exact same error that we have in the Winhance logs. So you can see here that there is a workaround to specify the source. So I can specify the source as WinGet and not the Microsoft Store, and then it will actually install the browser. But that's just a workaround. It doesn't actually fix the root cause. So at this point, I went back to Claude with this new information, gave him all the information of everything I just tested, and what works. And you can see as I'm typing here, the screen flickers, and that's a Claude Code issue. But I basically gave it all of that information and then told it to analyze again, ultra think about it, and then get back to me the same way it did before, where it gave me a complete breakdown of the issues and some potential solutions. So Claude came back with some stuff saying that it could be because of the registry keys where I don't allow apps to run in the background, or it could be that the Microsoft Store is not installed. But none of that was actually the issue. What the issue actually was is that WinGet was out of date. So I went and downloaded the latest version of WinGet manually from the GitHub releases page and installed that, because I also noticed the same thing happened on my main computer. And this is not just in the VM that this is happening. So you can see on the normal installation of Windows 11 that I've got open here, that wasn't installed with an XML file, the WinGet version is version 1.11. And this is where the WinGet installations is still working. So although it's not the latest version of WinGet, WinGet version 1.11 was at least still working, and you could install applications using that version because the certificates did still match. So at this point, I knew we had to update WinGet to get this working. So up until this point, the way Winhance worked was when doing a installation of one of these apps, it first checks, is WinGet available? If it's not available, it automatically downloads the latest version and then installs that. But if WinGet is available, it just uses WinGet to install the application. It doesn't actually do a check to see if it's up to date, because you would think that Windows Update and the Microsoft Store and stuff will install those updates automatically. And it does, but for users who remove those components, it won't update WinGet. So then I tried to update the app installer with WinGet, but because the MS Store can't be found, you have to specify the source as WinGet and not the MS Store. So the moment I did this, I was able to update WinGet via the command line. So after doing that, I was able to install something like Firefox using WinGet again on my main computer, which also had an outdated version of WinGet. And I also left a comment on the Winhance issues page asking these users to try out the following command to see if it works. So at this point, because I knew what the issue was, I went back to Claude and I explained the issue in a new chat, and I gave it some ideas as to how I think we could be fixing this, how we can determine whether the WinGet version is up to date or not. And it came back to me saying that before installing any app, the WinGet service is checking if WinGet exists. We knew that already. But if WinGet is not installed, it auto installs it via our installation script. But if WinGet is installed but outdated, it just proceeds with the installation anyway. And this is where the issue occurs. So we've got a few approaches here to self-update via WinGet. And this is what I wanted to do because this is how I tested it and how I know it works. So I gave it the instruction to implement approach 1, which is what I wanted. And then it should tell me when it's finished so I can build and test the project myself. So when it was done, I did a build of the application after these changes so I can test if it works. And I did another clean install of Windows using the XML file I did before, where I was able to recreate the issue of apps not installing. So this is the new virtual machine that it's loading in here, which is a clean install using the Winhance XML file. And the first thing I wanted to check here is what is the actual WinGet version that we have here. So I did WinGet-V to check the version, and you can see this is version 1.9. So this is really outdated. And I did a test to see if I try to install something in the command line here, would that work? Was it actually a Winhance issue or was it a WinGet issue? And we can see it indeed was a WinGet issue. But the fact that updates are disabled and the Microsoft Store isn't installed all play a role in not being able to update WinGet. So at this point, I just copied over the development build or the testing build that I've got for Winhance. I ran that. And then I came over to the external software, used Firefox as an example. And you can see at the bottom left there, it says it's updating WinGet to the latest version now. So this is already correct because previously the installation just errored out completely and just said that the installation failed. So it successfully saw that WinGet was out of date and then it proceeded with installing the WinGet update. As you can see, it's installing the Windows apps runtime as well. And then it also proceeded to install Firefox. Now, although it worked, there was some bugs in the code that Claude gave me, and it was related to the exit codes that it coded into the application. But I went ahead and got the correct exit codes from the documentation, the WinGet documentation. So I just told it to implement those fixes so I can test it again. And then after that, it was time for a last test. Selected Firefox again on a completely fresh install of Windows using the Winhance XML file. So I did a clean install, then I installed Firefox, and you can see immediately it is saying that it's updating WinGet. And if I just speed this up a bit, after the WinGet update is being installed, it automatically switches to and then installs the application that the user selected, or the applications, if it's more than one, that the user selected to be installed. So at this point, this issue was fixed, at least in my testing. So I just asked Claude if it could give me a commit message for everything we did here. And I basically have this prompt that I reuse so that I can just get the correct message that I need, and then also any of the issues that it fixes on GitHub, so that those can be closed automatically when I merge these changes into the main branch. So it gave me that message. So I went ahead and copied that, ran git status, added all of those files, then pasted the commit message, and then I just made some changes to the message as well, just so it's a little bit more clearer and more understandable. And then I went ahead and committed those changes, and then just pushed them up to the dev branch. So that was it for this issue. Now the next issue we had here is an issue where the source file between the ESD and WIM conversion, or vice versa, the source file was still present on the ISO. So you would basically have an install.esd file and an install.wim file. So for this specific issue, I gave Claude this prompt telling it to add longer timeout and retries to delete the wim.esd file, because I think that it's still locked in the DISM process by the time that Winhance tries to clean up the old source file. But I didn't just want to fix that issue. I also wanted the UI to clearly display if there is both a ESD and a WIM file present, and that the user should then choose one of those files that they want to keep so that they can delete the other one. So Claude came back with the state analysis like I asked it to, and then also provided some solutions with pros and cons to those solutions. So its recommended approach was to follow clean architecture, which is normally the best approach. You need clean architecture so you don't have a lot of technical depth and stuff. But I always wanted to show me both approaches so that I can decide which one that I want to use. Now, I did go with the clean architecture approach because it involves creating an actual result model and then to update the interface and implement it properly into the service layers. So it's not just a band-aid solution that it's going to implement. Then it also showed me the view model changes and stuff for a card that I wanted it to add. And then the pragmatic approach, which was option B, which is faster, but it's less clean. I didn't want that, so I let it implement the clean architecture approach. So when it was done with that, it basically first built the back end, so I can test that before building the front end. So I went over and I did a build and run of the application just to see that it is still launching, and it was. So I've just told it that it is working, and then pasted the next steps that it gave to me. I pasted it back to Claude and told it that it must go ahead and do that. So when I launched Winhance and I selected a directory which had both WIM and ESD in it, I clearly saw this card that you can see here, which says that both WIM and ESD is found, and then you can choose which one you want to delete. So I also tested the deletion of it, and at this point it didn't give me correct keys or translations for those messages yet. That's why it says stuff like dialog delete ESD and wimutil message delete, because I still need to add those translations or keys to the actual JSON files which has the translations. But right now we're just testing if it works. So I went ahead and deleted the ESD file, and then it takes a little while, but it comes back saying that it's deleted. And now you can see there's only the install.wim file that has been found. So at this point, the manual deletion works, but it doesn't work right after doing a conversion. As you can see from the log file that's open here, it keeps saying that it failed because the access to the path where that file is saved is denied. So I troubleshooted that with Claude as well, And what it basically came back with is saying that this is a Windows file handle management issue, and it's not a permissions issue. It's not like you don't have admin rights to delete this file. It's more an issue where the file is locked. It's read only. So I gave Claude the instruction to implement the attribute clearing so that it clears the read-only handles and stuff from those files, or from the source file that was converted. So after that, I also did the test to see if I convert this file again, does Winhance automatically delete the source file? So you can see I'm launching the conversion here, and that obviously takes quite a while, almost takes more than 20 minutes to do that. But fast forward, it did delete the source file. We didn't see a card telling us that both files have been found. And if we have a look at the log here, we can see that the task was started to convert it to a WIM file, and then it deleted the source file, which was in this case a .esd file. So at this point, this issue was solved, at least in my testing. So I just went and copied my git commit prompt that I reuse, gave that to Claude with the issues that it fixes for me, and it went and gave me a commit message that I can use. So I went back to PowerShell, did git status, added all of those files that we just used, pasted the message, committed those changes, and then pushed that up to the dev branch. Now I know the AI models can do this themselves, but currently Claude is installed in Windows Subsystem for Linux, and I didn't install Git inside of that Linux environment. I'm just doing this manually myself on the main computer via PowerShell, because I'm not at a point where I want the AI to do every single thing. I am using it to help me, but I'm still directing it as to what exactly I want from it. So the next thing I want to focus on is adding a translation to Winhance. So we had one request, and that is for the Dutch translation. So that's what I'm going to do right now. And to do that, I've got this translation prompt. So I reuse it, but I just changed the language to what it must be translated to. So basically what I do is I just make a copy of the English file and then have Gemini translate it to the language that it needs to be in. So let's go back to VS Code, and then I'm just going to fire up Gemini here. And first I'll need to make a copy of the en.json file and just paste it in the same directory. And now I'll just rename that to NL, since NL is the language code for Dutch, as far as I'm aware. So I'm just going to close these files, make this a little bit bigger, and then grab that prompt. I see that Gemini 3 Flash and Pro are now available. This is the free version of Gemini. So let me just go to the settings and look at the preview features. So I'll enable the preview features, apply to the user settings, and we can exit out of that. So I'm just going to copy the prompt, then right click to paste it, and then I'll just press enter and let Gemini start doing that translation while I'm going to be working on other bugs and issues. So if we go back to the issues page here on Winhance, we've got a lot of stuff to work through, but I'm mostly focused on the bugs right now and not the feature requests or enhancements or whatever. We have already fixed the bug where WinGet was unable to install any apps. And the next thing I need to work on is the visual bug where Winhance reports that some items are installed, but they're actually not installed. So we've got these two issues where the user says they can't uninstall Edge and they can't uninstall OneDrive. But the thing is, it is actually uninstalled. It's just that Winhance is reporting that it's still installed because it's a visual bug, the way that Winhance detects if an app is still installed. Now, the thing about this is if I search for the app status discovery service, I've got these methods to check whether Windows AppX packages are installed, capabilities, and then optional features. But when it comes to the external apps, I think there's an issue where it uses fuzzy matching, and basically it's like guessing which apps are installed, or not guessing, but it's not using a one-to-one package name to what it gets on the system, and I think that's an issue. So what I'm going to do is open up Claude here in Windows Subsystem for Linux, and I'm going to type out a prompt here so it can investigate that for me. First check if I'm correct in what I'm saying with regards to the fuzzy matching, and then see if we can't get a better plan to have a more consistent way of checking the status of apps that are installed on a user's computer. So what I've done here is I've told Claude it should have a look at the app status discovery service file to check how Winhance is detecting whether apps are installed or not, because I know we have a variety of methods. First it does a WinGet list command, then it also does a WMI query, and then it also checks the registry. So it has a variety of methods to check whether the app is installed or not. And then I basically gave an explanation here saying that the thing is, I don't think we're verifying it properly with the WinGet package ID property. So the way that I defined these apps, like the external apps, is each one has a WinGet package ID. And that's the same ID that you will see when you run the WinGet list command on your computer, for example. So if I open up the terminal or PowerShell as admin and I run WinGet list, it's going to give me a list of all of the installed apps on the computer. So for example, I've got Brave browser installed and the WinGet ID is brave.brave. So if I do a search for brave.brave in the code base, you will see that is the exact WinGet package ID. So the idea is that when Winhance does the query with WinGet list and it sees brave.brave is installed, then it also knows the WinGet package ID is brave.brave because I've got it defined here, and then it should mark that item as installed because it found it on the system. Now, just in case WinGet list doesn't work for some reason, maybe WinGet isn't installed, then I've got a WMI query, and that basically does the same thing as this. It also outputs the name and then the package ID. And then as a last resort, I've got the registry uninstall strings that it can also have a look at. So what I've basically told it here is I don't think it's verifying it properly with just the WinGet package ID, and we must use the result we get from the queries on the computer to match it one-to-one with what we have defined in Winhance. But the issue that I can see is when we have apps that require direct download. So there are some of these apps that people have requested that aren't available on WinGet. So then they've got this requires direct download parameter here, and then it uses a link from GitHub or wherever to download it. Now, obviously this doesn't have a package ID, so we'll probably have to use the name. And that's exactly what I told it here. Maybe we can then use the name property or only have these specific apps, because it's only like, if I do a search for this, it's only 2 apps that use this at the moment. And that's Teleguard and SniffNet. And then at the end here, I've just got this prompt that whenever I start a new conversation with Claude or with any AI model for that matter, I just basically tell it, it must first analyze this issue and then ultra think about it. Ultra think is a keyword specific to Claude Code, where it thinks through the entire process. And then it must provide me with its recommendations in a clear and understandable format. And there's some other stuff here, but basically it mustn't edit any files yet. It must come back to me with different steps that I can take forward and also give me the pros and cons of those steps, the code examples and all of that. But I'm going to send this message and then you'll see exactly what it comes back with. And then while it's doing that, I'm going to have a look at the translation prompt. So Gemini is asking if it can write this file. I'm going to allow it for this session. So it looks like it wrote to that file, but I'm just waiting for it to give me the final confirmation that it is actually finished. Yep, so it's also adding the language to the string keys file, which will have it show up in the UI of Winhance. So we've got a summary of the changes here. It translated to nl.json with the Dutch translations following my guidelines, and then it also updated stringkeys.cs to add the Dutch language for Netherlands. I guess I can do the same one for Belgium. But now before I launch the application and have a look at if the Dutch language is in there, I usually just have a look at the file first, because sometimes there can be issues in the file with escaping issues, but it looks like it did it correctly now on the first try. But before this, I was using Gemini 2.5 because, like I said, it's the free version that's available into the Gemini CLI, and now I just enabled the preview features, which has Gemini 3. So it might be that that's what fixed it and that I won't have that issue again. So I'm going to open a new PowerShell window here and then just do a .NET build and run on the project so I can see if the Dutch language is actually showing. So if we go to settings, language, there at the bottom I've got Netherlands, Dutch. And the funny thing about this is my native language is Afrikaans, and Afrikaans is basically a mix of Dutch and some other languages. So this is quite readable to me, and maybe I'll add an Afrikaans translation to the app as well. But I use stuff in English all the time. So I'm going to put it back to English. And when I started adding the translations to Winhance, I put in the release notes that I am using AI to do the translations. And if there are any errors in the translations, then people are welcome to fix it or create issues about it and give me the correct terminology for what has to be there in their specific language. But so far, everyone has said that the translations seem pretty accurate, so I haven't had any issues yet. But anyone is welcome to bring me suggestions if they do find something is really, really wrong with the translations. But with regards to this Dutch translation, what I'm actually going to do now is I'm going to create another copy of the NL file, which is the Dutch translation for Netherlands, and I'm going to paste it here. So I've got this NL copy, and I'm just going to rename this to NL-B. So this will be for Belgium. So then I'm just going to come back to Gemini, and I'm going to tell it that I've created a copy of the nl.json file and renamed it to NL-BE, which will now be the Belgium Dutch version, and that I wanted to update this new file so it matches accurate Belgium Dutch terms where needed. And then it must also please add it to the string keys file when it's done so that it shows up in the Winhance UI. So I'm going to go ahead and send that off. And then just to basically tell you how the translations work is each of these JSON files have what's called a key. So in this example, app title is the key, and Winhance looks for this specific key and then uses whatever is in this field to display it. So you'll see if I go to the en.json file, which is the English file, you've still got the keys, but the translations are in English. So if you go through each of these files, you'll see Hindi. It's now got a Hindi translation. Same with the Netherlands one we just did. The keys stay the exact same because the key is what Winhance looks for. And then we provide the translation here on the right. And this is all done in JSON files. So it's still busy doing the Belgian Dutch translation. I want to go back over to the Claude Code instance here to see what it came up with. So the first problem is the WinGet parsing is fundamentally broken. Okay, that's pretty interesting. So what it does is it parses WinGet list output. So we've got a method that parses the WinGet list output. It splits it by spaces, which fails for apps with multi-word names. So when it splits Google Chrome, it just gets the word Google. And the second part is Chrome and the third part is Google.Chrome. So it adds the word Google, Chrome and Google Chrome to the set. And this causes false matches and missed matches. And we've got an inconsistent matching strategy where we've got a direct string match and then a fuzzy match for the WMI registry. And it's over complex fuzzy matching. And I think the whole thing is this fuzzy matching thing is one of the main problems with this whole thing. Okay, so what approaches do we have? So its first approach is column-based parsing, which is pragmatic and recommended. So it'll actually take the whole column and it's going to find the separator line with dashes, the names, the IDs, and then get the entire column. So that could probably work, and we've got some pros and cons here. It's fast, a single pass through output, accurate. It depends on WinGet output format consistency and might break if WinGet changes output format. Use WinGet JSON output, which is clean architecture, which I like, and more future-proof. So modern WinGet supports JSON output. It's more maintainable. Still need manual table parsing. Secondary fix is to simplify fuzzy matching. We only use fuzzy matching as a fallback and make it much simpler. I agree with that. And then the critical fix is the match strategy. So after WinGet detection, get the exact match only for WinGet IDs. For the remaining apps, like if they require direct download, only fuzzy match those and log others as not found. Okay, so this could work, but I still want to ask another question here. So my response here is that it looks better, but instead of this column matching idea that it has, can't we run the WinGet list command with a parameter to select only what we need? I don't know the exact syntax, but I know in PowerShell you can do something like run a command like WinGet list in this instance, and then you can select object, or you can select only the ID, the field that you're looking for. or something like that. So I think we should do that with the WinGet list and the WMI query. And then at the end here, I'm just going to tell it that it should analyze again, think about it, and then get back to me the same way as before. So while it's running that, I'm going to go back to Gemini. So it's reviewed the Belgian Dutch file, and it says, since technical Dutch terminology is highly standardized across Netherlands and Belgium, especially in Windows context, the translation remains largely identical to the Netherlands one to ensure consistency with Microsoft's own localization standards. However, I made a few refinements for quality, but it did change some words, and then it did also register it in the string keys file and added it to the supported language list. So I've already got it there now. If I open the file, it is translated completely without any errors in the file itself. And if you just have a look at the line counts and compare that with the English translation, it goes to 1375, and that is the same with both of these translations we just made. So if I do a .NET build and run on the application again, we should be able to see both of them and use them. If we go to settings, have a look at the languages, we've got Netherlands Dutch and Netherlands België. So if I select that, we can use it, and you'll mostly see it inside of the settings that the labels have changed. So I think with regards to the translation, I'm finished with that. And to finish this off, we'll now have to push these changes to the dev branch. So to push these changes, I'm just going to do a git status. Okay, so those are the only files we've changed. Git add dot, so it adds all of those files. Then I'm going to do git commit m for the message, and I'll just say add Dutch translations in nl.json and nl-be.json, and then I'll also say closes 282 because this is the feature request 282. So what will happen is when I publish the new release, that issue will be closed by default, and I won't have to go back and do it manually. So we've committed those changes. Now we just have to push it. So we'll do git push origin dev, and now it's been pushed up to the dev branch. So if I go to the Winhance GitHub page, just to show you, because remember, I'm also still learning all of this, but just to show you, if we go to the dev branch, there it says it had recent pushes. So if I go to the dev branch, we'll now see I just added the Dutch translations in those files. Okay, so that's it for the translations, at least in this episode of the Winhance Devlog. So I'm also going to close the Gemini terminal, and then let's go back to the Claude Code instance that we were working with, because I had a question here about the logic. Okay, so it's analyzed the options again. WinGet JSON output is the better solution. So I'm on the right track, but WinGet doesn't support PowerShell's select object. It outputs text, not objects. But modern WinGet versions, version 1.4, the latest release is 1.12. Version 1.4 hasn't been released yet. So that's the thing, you have to check these. You have to check what these AI models tell you. You can't just blindly believe it. So what I'm busy with isn't vibe coding. I'm using AI to write the code, but it's human directed. I'm a human directing it in the right direction. Because if I told it just to fix this issue, I don't think it would have worked properly. But in any event, even if it's not correct on the WinGet version that it has there, part of this update, we've made it so that WinGet will automatically be updated if it's outdated anyways. So if WinGet isn't found, it's going to download and install WinGet with a script. But if WinGet is found but it's outdated, it's automatically going to update it. So we should be able to use the JSON output like Claude is suggesting. And then it says that the WMI query is already optimized and the registry is already optimized. So all in all, we can use the WinGet JSON output, add a JSON parser, improve the table parser, which is the fallback methods. And then why not use the PowerShell execution service? Well, it already answered this because the ID is a text field, it's not an object. So we'll use the JSON fallback to table approach. So it's first going to try WinGet with JSON support that it's going to add now. And then apps that haven't been found via WinGet, we'll use WMI and registry with fuzzy matching. So I'm going to tell it to implement its recommendation and also remember to fix the fuzzy matching logic and strategy like it told me in the first response that it gave. And then I'm also just going to paste a prompt here that if I run this, you'll see, I just tell it to write simple yet effective code. Don't over engineer anything. Remove summaries and excessive comments. just leave comments that provide actual meaningful value, and then make sure there's no leftover dry, don't repeat yourself, or Yagni code as it relates to this specific task. So if you don't know what dry and Yagni means, like I said, dry means don't repeat yourself, and Yagni means you ain't gonna need it. So it should remove any code that's not going to be used anymore as it relates to this specific task. So it's busy implementing those changes now. And while it's doing that, I'm going to fire up a virtual machine here so I can actually test by removing apps like Edge and OneDrive, which people have reported issues with specifically. Okay, so it's implemented all the changes. It's using JSON parsing with WinGet with a table fallback, new JSON parser, improved table parser, and simplified the fuzzy matching. And it also cleaned up the unused methods and simplified the logging like I wanted it to. So now we're going to do a build of the project. Check if it launches without any errors. And yes, it is launching. And I can see on my main computer here, it still detects installation, and it does seem to detect the apps that I actually do have installed without any false reports here. So at least on my main computer, this does seem to look correct. But like I said, I'm going to test this in a VM. So I'm going to copy this debug build that I have into my share for the VM, overwrite all the files from the previous version I tested. So then in the VM here, I'm just going to go to the network share, copy the debug build that I'm busy testing with the .NET runtime that I'll need to run it, and then we can see if we still have the same issue. I actually did see this issue myself when I was recording one of the videos in December for my main channel, but I haven't gotten around to fixing it yet because it was holidays and stuff. But now we can check. So I'll just install the Windows Desktop runtime and then open Winhance. So this is going to take quite a while because it's the first launch in this virtual machine, and it's going to create the registry backups and all of that, which is another system that I need to rework. So there's still a lot of work to be done on Winhance, and it's a work in progress, but with you guys' help, creating issues, letting me know about the bugs and some improvements, together we can make it a really good application. Okay, so Winhance just launched and I can see that it's detected all of these apps. It shouldn't be detecting anything in the external software except for Microsoft Edge WebView, because that's installed. And then I also see it has Microsoft 365. But I think maybe the Microsoft 365 one is a false positive. What happens if I try to uninstall that? It doesn't actually uninstall it. We'll make a mental note of the Microsoft 365 that it's detecting as installed. I want to get to the issues that the users have created, which was related to Edge and then OneDrive. So I'm going to remove both of those because it's actually after they've been removed with Winhance that Winhance still reports them as installed. And that is an issue. So I'm going to let these scripts run and then do a refresh on the UI to see if it still detects it as installed or not. Okay, if I refresh the UI now, what does it do with regards to Edge and OneDrive? So OneDrive is still uninstalled and Microsoft Edge as well. So this is the correct behavior. This is what it should do. If we have a look at the apps, there's no Microsoft Edge or OneDrive found on the system. If we look at the installed apps, it definitely has been removed. So at least in terms of the Microsoft Edge and OneDrive false status reports, that's been fixed. Edge WebView still shows as installed, and that is the way that it should be because the Edge removal script doesn't remove Edge WebView. But can I actually try and uninstall WebView here? So the uninstallation fails for Edge WebView. But if I refresh the installation status, does it still detect it as installed? It does. But I think the Microsoft Edge WebView uninstallation might be failing because Microsoft Edge isn't installed on the system anymore, because it's going to use the Microsoft Edge uninstaller to uninstall WebView. So just to test that, I'm going to reinstall Microsoft Edge quickly and see if I can remove the WebView component while Microsoft Edge is still installed, because I think it needs the Microsoft Edge files to uninstall Edge WebView. But while it's doing that, I need to have a look at the Microsoft 365 that it's detecting as installed. This is either with the WMI query or the registry method that we're using to detect which apps are installed. So I'm just gonna try this WMI query, VMware Tools, Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Windows Desktop Runtime. So it doesn't look like it's the WMI query, unless it gets Teams as the Microsoft 365 package. Let's open regedit. Let's first check the local machine uninstall path for anything related to Microsoft 365. Okay, let's check the current user. Don't see anything there. And then wow, 6432 node. There's Microsoft Edge Update and Edge WebView, but I don't see anything specifically related to Microsoft 365. So while I'm still busy testing this, I'm going to go back to Claude into this chat here. I'm going to tell it looks better, but it looks like Microsoft 365 is being false detected as installed, although it's not installed. This is on a fresh install of Windows 11. I don't know if there is some sort of Office 365 component somewhere without it being installed yet. Do you have any ideas? We'll just see what it comes up with, but in the meantime, so Edge is installed again and working. Now the thing is, I haven't really tried uninstalling Edge WebView before. I don't know if it's protected as well, if it needs to be uninstalled with a script. I'm not sure. Only got Microsoft Edge and Microsoft Edge Game Assist here. So WinGet list, does it show the actual Edge WebView 2 runtime here? Doesn't look like is listed as a separate package, because I know someone reported that they can't uninstall WebView 2, but that might be something I'll have to look at in another update. I'm going to open this log file again and see. So when it tries to uninstall WebView, it tries to do it via the registry. So it does use the Microsoft Edge installer, but I don't think it actually passes the WebView parameter which it needs to. I wonder this exit code. If we go over to WinGet, it says this error code is related to there's no packages found. So that's obviously also a bug where Winhance reports Edge WebView as installed, but WinGet is reporting that the app isn't found. And then we've got a fallback to use the registry uninstall string to uninstall WebView, but I don't think it's passing the correct parameters over to actually uninstall it. We'll have a look at it now. What does Claude say? So it says fresh Windows 11 installs have Office or Microsoft 365 stub entries in the registry, and they're placeholders to advertise Office, not actual installations. Let me investigate what might be causing it. Okay, so let me just do the checks again. Microsoft.NET, VMware Tools, Windows Desktop Runtime, .NET, Microsoft Teams. I don't see anything here related specifically to Office, and nothing in the current user either. So we'll tell it there's no Office entries. What is the WinGet package ID I've got to find in Winhance? Microsoft 365, Microsoft.office. The package ID is Microsoft.office. Yes, it is. No Office entries. Microsoft Office submit answers. Just for interest's sake, if we do a search on WinGet search Microsoft.office, does this even exist? Yeah, Microsoft 365 apps for enterprise, Microsoft.office. So the ID is correct. So it says fresh Windows 11 installs often has Office click to run services or stub components. But the thing is, we didn't see a Microsoft.office when we ran WinGet.list here. I don't see a Microsoft.office here at all. So the solution is to filter out system components, because system components are usually services or stubs and not user-facing applications. So it's filtering out system components in the registry, enhanced logging for Office on 365 apps, and we'll also have some more info in the logs now. Let's just run this WinGet list select string Office just to see what it does. No, it doesn't find it. Okay, so next thing to do is build the application again, copy over the new build or the latest changes we just made, and then test that in the virtual machine to see if the false positive is still there for the Office 365. Copy over the new version, just run this latest build, see what happens. Okay, we go over to external software and we look at document viewers. So Microsoft 365 is still detected, but at least now we can go to the logs and we can see what's detecting it as installed. Fallback detected, Microsoft.Office via WMI plus registry. So let's give that back to Claude. I'm just going to tell it to give me a PowerShell commands to check the registry entries as well as the WMI query, so it can see why the fuzzy matching logic is marking Microsoft 365 as installed, because I've checked it manually and I don't see where it is. Okay, so check WMI. Let's do that first. So we'll paste that. Above is the WMI query output. Okay, so the Microsoft Teams meeting add-in for Microsoft Office with vendor Microsoft. The fuzzy matcher sees it contains Office because it's for Microsoft Office, and the vendor contains Microsoft, so it's a false positive. Let's just try this script again, because I would actually like to see what this reports to, just so we can be thorough. So it also reports that Microsoft Teams add-in. So this is the culprit. So it's just going to make it a bit stricter for that. Add-in, for, and plugin. So it's added a filter to skip add-ins, plugins, and for X. In this case, for Microsoft Office. So I'm going to build the project again. And on my main computer here, I should be seeing that Microsoft 365 is installed, because it is actually installed. I mean, you can see that I've got the Outlook Classic on top there of the taskbar. So on my main computer here, we should be seeing Microsoft 365 installed. On the virtual machine, it shouldn't be installed. And now we've got another bug, because now it reports that Microsoft 365 isn't installed on my main computer, but it is. If we go to apps and features, let me just see what it shows there. Microsoft 365 is installed. So let's actually try the WMI query as well. Let me see what it reports. So the WMI query actually does have Microsoft 365. And now I just quickly want to run this apps script on the main machine as well. You see, so it is actually reporting Microsoft 365. So now the thing is, I'll need to go back to Claude and tell it of this issue. And I do see that WinGet actually also reports it as installed. What I'm going to do now is also pass this WinGet query. So I'm just going to paste that as well. So I've just told it that I've got another issue where now on a computer where Office 365 is installed, it's showing that it's not installed. And I'm giving it all of the information from all three queries that Winhance uses to detect installed apps, and I'll tell it to fix it. So we'll see what it comes up with and then do another test. So it sees the issue. The WinGet package ID is different than the actual display name. So it's going to add a alt product name. The fuzzy matcher looks for Office in Microsoft 365 and fails. And the WinGet ID shows something completely different. So the thing is, it's changed. When it's checking for Microsoft Office, it also checks for Office 365 and Microsoft 365. But the thing I don't like about this is looking at the code. It's hard-coded these if product name equals Office, else if. I don't like this, because this is so specific to the Office suite now. So it's basically just trying to fix this specific issue, which is fine. That's what we're working on. But what about all the other apps that we also have defined? To me, this tells me there's an issue with the actual fuzzy matching that it uses. So I'm not happy with this. So I've told it now that I'm not really happy with that fix, because it only addresses the Office issue. It doesn't address the deeper logic issue we have here, because the same thing can now happen with other applications. At the end of the day, we'll have a bunch of if statements with hard-coded stuff just to get this working. And I don't want that. So the way that I understand it, we are using the WinGet package ID. But in this case, the WinGet package ID that we have defined in Winhance doesn't directly correlate to what the computer reports, because it wasn't installed via WinGet. It was installed through another installer. But the thing is, the name still contains Microsoft 365, and the name is defined in Microsoft 365 in Winhance. So can't we change it so that for the WinGet detection, it does the WinGet package ID 1-to-1, like we've been doing, but then it also tries WinGet name matching. So the name that it gets from the WinGet output, which is this, it can also match it to the name that we have in Winhance. And then after that, it continues with the WMI query and the registry, and if that would work. But let's see what Claude comes back with. So hard coding these is like a band-aid solution, and that's exactly what I don't want. So the better approach is the WinGet package ID match, then the WinGet name to Winhance name. So this solves the problem generically for all apps. So currently we are just using the WinGet package IDs. Yes, we know that. So it will need to change the method signature to accept the full definitions, which isn't an issue. It can do that. So it's got some questions. Well, it should actually look at the files and answer it yourself. Look at the files in the code base and answer it yourself. So I can see that it is item definition.name, but where the method is called from, so it can update the caller, it should do a search on the code base to find out all of that. It already found out how the method signature should be changed because it has to be consistent with what we're using in the code base. So now it's got the information that it needs, so it can fix that. Okay, so it is finished with the code changes. I'm going to do another .NET build and .NET run so we can test if the changes actually work or not. Okay, so we go over to external software, look at Microsoft 365, and unfortunately it's still not detected. It shows up as not installed. So let's go over to the logs. So I'm just going to copy these logs. I'm going to give it back to Claude. So I've just given it the logs and I've told it that it's still not detecting Microsoft 365 as installed. And then I told it, remember that the WinGet output has the language at the end, so ENUS. And on other languages, that's going to be different. But in Winhance, we only have Microsoft 365 there. So it should only look for the first part, the Microsoft 365, without the language. So I don't know if that's an issue, or rather, I don't know if that's the exact issue, because it says it detects Microsoft 365 like this and matches it to that definition name. But it's obviously not working. So we need to make the name matching, the name property, not the WinGet package ID. We need to make that fuzzy or partial instead of exact. So it's added a match WinGet name method that handles partial matching intelligently. So Chrome won't match Google Chrome because Google Chrome doesn't start with Chrome. It's not too strict and it's simple. Let's do another build and run of the application to see if it actually does work, because if you trust the AI, it would have worked 5-6 prompts ago already. That's why you can't just trust the AI when it tells you that it's fixed or that it will now work or it's found the problem. You have to continuously test and make sure that it actually does work. So what do we have? Okay, Microsoft 365 is now showing as installed on this computer where it is actually installed. So let's go over to the virtual machine and then test it out on this virtual machine that doesn't have Microsoft 365 installed and which falsely reported that it did. So I'll just copy over this to the VM. And the reason I'm using a share instead of just copying and pasting it is sometimes copy and pasting doesn't work from the main computer to this VM. I've just had issues with that before, and just setting up a network share, or the share is basically just a folder on the main computer where I paste the files and then I set that up as a network drive in the virtual machine. For me, that just seemed to work a lot better than trying to copy and paste the thing over the entire time. Okay, so if we go to external software, now it also actually doesn't report Microsoft Edge Web View as being installed. And that might actually be correct because we don't see that in the installed apps either. And now also Microsoft 365 isn't being reported as installed anymore. The other thing I'm concerned with is the OneDrive. It is still showing as not installed, which is correct. Microsoft Edge is showing as installed because I reinstalled it. But I can go ahead and remove it again just to do a final test to see if these issues that we had, that the users were reporting, is now actually fixed or not. So if I do a refresh of the installation status, just to get all of these apps organized again, I expect to see that Microsoft Edge is showing as not installed and OneDrive is also showing as not installed on this computer. So there we go. Edge not installed, OneDrive not installed. So that looks correct now, at least in my testing. we'll see if users report otherwise, but I do think that it is correct now. So to end this task, I'm going to grab my commit message prompt that I have, and I'm going to give that to Claude. So there we have Edge falsely showing as installed despite being removed from the system. That's related to this 268. So we'll put that as 268. And I think that's it for this specific issue. I also had this a long time ago with regards to the Rockstar launcher being detected as Epic Games. So I'll just pause this as well, 232. So bug 284, this person said that every time they install LibreOffice, the indicator for Microsoft 365 is showing as installed 2. So let's go ahead and test that. I'll have to test this in the virtual machine again. Okay, let's go external software. Let's look for LibreOffice, install that, and then we'll see if Microsoft 365 is still being reported as installed, as that user reported and made the issue about. Okay, so LibreOffice was just installed, and it is only marking LibreOffice as installed, but let's do a refresh on the UI, a complete refresh, to see if it marks Microsoft 365 as installed, and it doesn't. So I think that issue is also fixed. So bug number 284, we can also pass that to Claude. 284. And the reason I'm doing this is because if I commit these changes to GitHub, and when I create the new release, it's going to automatically close those issues for me so that I don't have to go and do it manually. So I'm just going to copy this, paste it into a new doc, just make sure that it is accurate. So we improve external app detection. WinGet detection uses 3-step strategy. That's exactly what we did. False negatives, match WinGet name, and then it fixes those issues. So I'll copy that, go back to PowerShell. Then we're going to do git status again. So those are all the files that we worked on. We'll do git add dot, which means it's going to add all of those files. Then we'll paste that git commit message, enter it, and then do git push origin dev, and it's going to push those changes to the dev branch. Now there's one last thing that I want to do for this update, and that is this user that said there's an issue with the Chinese simplified and traditional Chinese versions where it shows the exact same thing, and they say, for example, use this for simplified and that for traditional, and they also gave the code example. So I appreciate that. Let me copy this, search for it in the code base, which is in string keys, and then we can copy the suggested improvement. So I really appreciate this, and save that. Then we can do git status again. It should just be the one file. Then I just want to build the project just to ensure that it does show these characters now inside of Winhance itself. Okay, so if we go to settings, English, yes, I can see that it did change. And we can change that to Chinese simplified as well as Chinese traditional. And they didn't report anything specific with regards to the translation that's wrong. It's just the options to choose between those two that was wrong. So it looks like that is fixed. And to be honest, I think that's going to be it for this update. So I'm just going to do git status, git add dot, then we'll git commit this with the message fix Chinese language options in the Winhance UI, and we'll do another message that says closes 297 so that it's automatically closed, and then we'll push those changes to the dev branch. But I just want to tell this guy thanks, this will be fixed in the next release. Thank you so much for providing the code examples, made my life a lot easier. Then we'll just comment that. Okay, so we obviously still have a lot of open issues, and a lot of these are related to bugs, but the main things that I wanted to get fixed in this specific update was the fact that the WinGet installations isn't working. That's a really crucial thing to get fixed. And then the fact that the apps showed the wrong installation status. So I'm going to create a new release here. So I'm going to go to the extras folder and then just create a new PowerShell window here. Then what we'll do is build the package and sign the application. So I'm just going to copy that command, paste it in here and then start that. But I'm going to drag this off screen because it's going to prompt me for the certificate to sign the application. I don't want to show all of that on the recording. In the meantime, I'm going to start up a fresh virtual machine so we can test the actual application that we built, the one that will be installed. So here you can see that we just successfully compiled the installer with the certificate and that they're both signed. So this is the file that everyone gets to download and install Winhance with. There is the Winhance installer, and you'll see if I run that, it automatically puts the date for the version there. So I'm on a Windows 10 VM here with the new Winhance installer, and I want to test it on Windows 10 specifically because Windows 10 WinGet isn't installed by default. You'll see if I run WinGet-V, it doesn't recognize WinGet. So we'll just restart the VM and then launch Winhance. Okay, so it does launch and it is working. In terms of the external software, doesn't look like anything is installed here. Now I said WinGet isn't installed by default. Let's try and install something like Brave. So it's starting the WinGet download. So that's working, but this used to work on Windows 10 before. I'm not sure if the issue we had with the WinGet being outdated could have caused anything here not to work. It basically just detects if WinGet is installed. If it's not installed, then it installs the latest version. But anyway, let's install WinGet and see if Brave can be installed. That's basically the only test I want to do because all of the other stuff is working, language changing and all of that. Okay, so it's installed WinGet and now we've got Brave. So if this is installed, then I'm happy, and I think the new release for Winhance is ready, which will feature a lot of fixes compared to the one that I released in December. And there we go. We installed Brave browser, so I'm happy with that. I'm confident that the other issues we worked on also works because we did test it thoroughly. But now what I need to do is make a pull request for all of the changes that we have in the dev branch so that it can get into the main branch. So we'll just do dev to main, and this is bug fixes and new translations. I'll just put that as the description as well. So this is going to merge the 5 commits into main from dev, and that's exactly what I want. And these are the 5 commits we worked on: the WinGet fixes, the Dutch translations, the wim.esd file conversion, the improve external app detection, and then fixing the Chinese language options. So we'll merge those pull requests, or the pull request rather, confirm that, and now we've got that in main. And actually now issues will already be closed. You see it just dropped from 39 to 34. So that's where it automatically closes the issues. But now what I'll do is, so I need to create a tag. So it's going to be git tag and then version 26.01.12, and then we'll do push origin tag. So it's just created that tag on GitHub now. So if we go back to the Winhance GitHub page and then to releases, I've now got this draft release here automatically created for me. So I just need to go back and check this format. Some of these things I can still do a better job of automating, and that'll come in this here. So this is Winhance release 14 version 26. Previous tag was that. Then we've got the changes in here, commits, and then what did I put in previous releases? Yeah, the localization and then installation. So I'll just do changes, remove that, and then we've got those 5 fixes. Now we can take our Winhance installer for this new version, drop it into the files that we put for this release, so that when I publish this release now, people will get a update notification inside of Winhance telling them to download the latest version, and it'll then download this Winhance installer file. So we'll set this as the latest release and then publish the release, and now we've got Winhance release 14 with those changes so everyone can see what happened. I definitely need to make this automation a little bit better, but for now it'll do, and we've got the new release just released now. So hopefully this fixes a lot of the issues people had. In my testing at least it did. And if you stuck on this video all the way till the end, then I want to thank you. If you have any feedback for me with regards to this video or Winhance itself, you can leave a comment down below and I'll take it into consideration. I'm still learning development. I'm still learning how to create videos like this, and I never think that I know everything, and I'm open to people's opinions and constructive criticism. Doesn't mean I have to implement it, but I do appreciate each and every one of you. So I want to thank you so much for watching, and I'll check you in the next video. Cheers.